Pokémon Gold and Silver, the second generation of Pokémon. These games expanded on Pokémon Red and Blue in such a big way. The importance of these games cannot be understated, but in order to talk about them, first we gotta talk about Red and Blue and why those were super important as well. Pokémon Red and Green were released in Japan in 1996. Later, an enhanced version called Pokémon Blue came out in the same year. When Pokémon came to the US, they based it off the enhanced Blue version under the names Pokémon Red and Blue. Between these and Pokémon Yellow, the first generation of Pokémon games sold 47.5 million units. This revitalized the declining Game Boy, and Pokémon established itself as a major IP right off the bat. Or did it? But how would a sequel fare? There have been plenty of fads. Was Pokemon just another one, or would this franchise just kind of flame out and die after the first entry? The development story of Gold and Silver is a fun one. Game Freak developed the game from help with Nintendo. Game Freak claimed that they have taken up most of the cart with just the Johto region. Before getting Nintendo's help, it's been confirmed that only 4 programmers were on the job for Gold and Silver. However, Nintendo used their compression magic and managed to fit Johto on one half of the cart. Then Nintendo and Game Freak had the brilliant idea to throw Kanto in as a post-game. Those damn bastards. That took Pokemon Gold and Silver from one of my favorite Pokemon games to easily my favorite one, and honestly, one of my favorite games ever. I miss that mindset when Pokemon tried to give their fans their all, the most they could. This was back when Pokemon was a video game franchise with some media. Nowadays, it's really a media franchise with some video games. Gold and Silver released a critical acclaim on November 21st, 1999 in Japan, and the sales followed. Yes, it wasn't the absolute monster that Red and Blue were, but it still sold an insane amount, nearly 30 million copies when Crystal's included. It is agreed upon by many that Gold and Silver are an insane improvement over Red and Blue, and are still many fan favorite today. The gameplay was more balanced, they added so many new features, so many quality of life changes, things such as the night and day cycle, breeding, days of the week, the phone. The momentum carried into the US too, when it was released on October 15th, 2000. Story itself doesn't change much from its predecessor, or really at all. A young boy, or girl in Crystal version, it's cool that they give the option, embarks out on a journey to collect gym badges by defeating gym leaders. The player can use creatures called Pokemon to fight these gym leaders and their trainers. The 3 starter Pokemon on display here are the Fire-type Cyndaquil, the Water-type Totodile, and the Grass-type Chikorita. I personally really like these starters, and they're probably my favorite trio, only behind Gen 1. Cyndaquil in particular is my favorite. It's just so cute. Meanwhile, Typhlosion is a badass. While walking on the overworld, there are trainers littered everywhere. If the player happens to step in their sight, a battle will commence. Some will be static, meanwhile others will spin around and try to trick players. The player can have up to 6 Pokemon on them, and they can grow levels by beating other Pokemon. A Pokemon can have 1 through 4 moves, and do I really need to explain this? It's Pokemon, damn it. It's been around for ages and has been imitated by so many other games and franchises now. Instead, I think I'll just talk about how Gold and Silver built upon Red and Blue. 2 brand new types are added in Pokemon Gold and Silver, and I would deem them a great addition personally. Dark-type has a very cool theme to it, and has a few badass Pokemon such as Umbreon and Houndoom. It is also thrown in there for balancing purposes. You see, in Generation 1, only one type beats Psychic, and that was Bug-type. Ghost was supposed to as well, but there was a bug that prevented that from happening, and instead, Ghost-type didn't even affect Psychic-type. On top of all this, there are only 3 Bug-type moves, which were Pin Missile, Leech Life, and Twin Needle. All these moves range from fucking horrible to mediocre. This made Psychic-type Pokemon absurdly OP in Gen 1. The Dark-type Pokemon completely resist Psychic-type attacks and deal double damage to them. This, combined with the fact that Shadow Ball is actually a move, so now Ghost-types have a reliable stab, really hurt Psychic-types and helped with the battling. The Steel-type was also added, and I kind of view it as a companion to Rock-type. These usually focus on physical defense, and leads to somewhat sweet Pokemon such as Steelix, Skarmory, and Scizor. Magneton and Magnemite also experienced a type change from Gen 1. Instead of just being electric, they are now Steel and Electric. Generation 2 also decided to touch on the stats a bit. In Generation 1, Special was a single stat and it determined both the Pokemon's damage they would do when using special attacks and how much damage they would receive when they get hit by special attacks. Gold and Silver split these up into Special Attack and Special Defense. This is a huge change that nerfed many Pokemon such as Mewtwo and nerfed many moves such as Amnesia and Growth. Another thing that were added were the day and night cycles and the days of the week. The fact that this cartridge had a living clock inside of it was just so cool to me as a kid, although it should be stressed that the always running clock made these cartridge batteries die faster than other Game Boy games. It was also fun finding what would happen at different days of the week and different times of day. Did you know that you could find a wild Lapras in the Uden Cave on Fridays after you defeated Morty? Did you know that your rival challenges you on Monday and Wednesdays if you try to go into the Elite Four? The last one I only recently discovered as I played through Silver again when it came out on 3DS's Virtual Console. I love that I'm still learning things about this 20-year-old game. Generation 2 introduced items that can be held in battle. This was a neat feature that actually had a huge impact on the gameplay. Pokemon can use berries in the middle of a fight when they're holding them. You can be safe from a clutch mint berry in a tough spot, for example. There are also held items like the magnet, sharpbeak, and charcoal that power up certain type moves when held. There's also the light ball that takes Pikachu's special attack stat to an insane level. Marowak also gets this treatment with the thick club. There's also the quick claw that will give the Pokemon that's holding it a chance to strike first. The bright powder, which lowers the accuracy of an opponent when held. There's a King's Rock that can make the enemy flinch. There's leftovers that heals your health every turn. It really does spice up the gameplay. It can add a lot of fun to it too. One of my favorite personal things is the quality of life features. They cannot be understated here. If a player gets into a battle with a wild Pokemon species that they've already caught, a little Pokeball will be displayed. It's crazy to me how Pokemon Red and Blue are games that revolve around catching them all, but there's no way to see in a battle if the player has actually caught a Pokemon or not. A little experience bar will also show the progress of your Pokemon's level underneath their health. This is another feature that really should have just been in Red and Blue. The item storage received an overall change as well, and holy shit, it needed it. In Red and Blue, items are all clumped together with very limited storage space. It wasn't even possible to hold all 50 TMs if you'd want to for whatever reason. There are also different pockets for regular items, key items, Pokeballs, TMs, HMs. It makes a huge difference. Also, if the player wants to cut a tree, they can just press A on it and a prompt will show up now. Same thing will happen when trying to push a boulder, trying to surf, smashing a rock. In Red and Blue, the player would have to go into the Pokemon menu, select the Pokemon, and select the HM. First world problem here, I know, but it was very time consuming and annoying to do over and over again. Also, the game is in color now. I know it's nostalgia, but I love the pixel art of the Game Boy and its bleepy bloopy music. Gold and Silver are my favorite looking and sounding games. Pokemon Red and Blue's pixel art was just a bit ugly in my opinion, and with the limited color palette, it would sometimes feel dull too. Gold and Silver just feels so full of life and just so colorful. I'm also a huge fan of a lot of the sprites on display here too. Pokemon Gold and Silver definitely weren't perfect though. HMs went rampant in this one, and I ain't a fan of that shit. It almost feels like you have to have an HM slave rather than having 6 Pokemon with moves that you actually want. Also, why the hell do we need 3 water HMs? Whirlpool is literally cut in the water. It seems tacked on and pointless. Movesets in general can be a bit off in these games too. Did you know that despite being a fighting type Pokemon, Heracross can only learn Reversal as its stab fighting type move? That's so dumb. Pokemon like Crobat, Venusaur, and Gengar can't learn Sludge Bomb, even though there's a poison type and there's a TM for it. What is with that? The layout of Johto is neat too, but it also kind of gets in its own way. Gyms 5 and 7, you can fight them in any order you want, but this creates an annoying 8th gym, and of course it's a Dragon Gym, with Kingdra as the final Pokemon. Kingdra basically doesn't have a weakness, and this gym is a bit annoying every playthrough because it seems like there's a minor grind you have to go through. The last major complaint that I can think of is the fact that some Pokemon introduced in Gen 2 are found in Kanto, and by that point the game's already half over, such as Houndour. That being said though, going to Kanto was mind-blowing back then, and honestly it still kind of is now. Ruby and Sapphire made my penis flaccid after I realized you couldn't go back to Johto. That was completely badass. These games can also trade with a whole slew of Generation 1 games, providing that the Johto player had only older Pokemon and moves on them. Trading back a generation never came back. Moving forward, players can now trade upward, but if you still wanted to play the older games with that party, maybe do like an alternating thing, that party just can't go back. And now you have to pay for that feature too, since Game Freak is doing whatever the hell they are with the Pokemon Bank thing. But since you can go back to Kanto, this means that there are a whopping 16 badges the player can earn. After getting these badges, the player can go and fight Red. It's a pretty cool showdown as his Pokemon are level 70 to 80. Also, as a more subjective thing, Lugia is a badass and I adore him. Probably my favorite mascot Pokemon and one of my favorites ever. I personally think Johto has a very strong batch of Pokemon that I simply adore. Some of them off the top of my head are Crobat, Lugia, Typhlosion, Jumpluff, Furret, Skarmory, Spinarak, Ho-Oh, Caesar, Quagsire, Pichu, Porygon 2... and that's just off the top of my head. I love making teams in the Johto games. I never know who I'm going to end up with. The rival is such a douchebag too, and I love it. It's annoying how rivals nowadays are such pussy, and they always stop the player just to talk to them. We're rivals, damn it, not friends. I also forget to mention that Kurt makes Pokeballs. He's basically useless in Gold and Silver because he can only make one a day, but in Crystal, he's actually pretty helpful because he can make multiple of one type. Speaking of Pokemon Crystal, let's talk about that a little bit. Pokemon Crystal was released in Japan on December 14th, 2000, North America on July 29th, 2001, and Europe on November 2nd, 2001. My view of it is similar to most other sister games. They're pretty cool, but completely unnecessary. Maybe if you're looking for an excuse to play through a Gen 2 game again if you only play Gold and Silver, Crystal can prove its worth, but for like a full MSRP, I personally wouldn't say so. It did add some cool features though, such as Pokemon animations at the beginning of a fight, a move tutor who can teach Thunderbolt, Ice Beam, and Flamethrower, the option to pick a female, and it also had the Battle Tower, which I admittedly haven't really dabbled in. Definitely not worth full asking price like I said before, but if you don't have Gold and Silver, I would definitely go for that one as it's the best of the 3 versions. Gold and Silver were also released for 3DS's Virtual Console in 2017, with Crystal following in 2018. Pokémon Gold and Silver are landmark games. They expanded on Pokémon Red and Blue so greatly, taking virtually 0 steps back, meanwhile just charging forward. Game Freak and Nintendo went all out in this one, and it's mind-blowing how much content and how fun these games were back in 2000, and honestly still till this day. I still play these about every year or so, and I love it every time. These games received a remake called Heart Gold and Soul Silver in 2009 that I'll probably cover eventually, but unfortunately due to these remakes, many consider the originals pointless nowadays, but I still adore them. Pokemon Gold and Silver easily earned 7 out of 7s from me.